Hey there, Ken French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Ken French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by.
Man, I'm excited about this conversation. There's so many reasons why I'm excited about it. Number one, I know it's going to help our entrepreneur clients to, make money, save money, et cetera, et cetera. So this is going to be an action-packed half an hour that's going to add some value to some business owner clients without a doubt. So thank you for being here. I know that, a CPA doesn't normally hang out on podcasts, et cetera, but this one, I'll be gentle and it's going to be informative for the clients. How does that all sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right. First of all, I'm going to get right to it. Why don't we talk about one way you think business owners can make more money or save money based on finances?
I think for them to be able to make more and save more, they have to know what they're doing with their money now. I find so many people, they'll say, I'm making all this money, but I have no idea where it's going because they're not, in tune with it or keeping track of it. Sometimes they black out. They don't want to look at it. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, first they have to know what's going on because they don't know what they don't know and they're not tracking things.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how people, the way I look at it is we're entrepreneurs. As entrepreneurs, if we don't know how our investments are doing, we don't know if our investments are successful or not. And one way of doing that is watching your finances. That's the true measure of entrepreneurs, looking at their finances. And I think you're right. People close their eyes, they're scared or whatever the case is. And it's really something very, very important. I don't think they should know the insides and outs, even though it'd be great. But at the same time, they should employ someone who does know the insides and outs of their finances. I totally agree with you. You're preaching to the choir there. I like it.
Absolutely.
All right, Brandy Beth, tell our audience, remember, our audience would be entrepreneurs, usually real estate investors. Our entrepreneurs are, sometimes they'll have an operating company. Sometimes they'll just be wealthy real estate investors. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why it makes sense to listen to you speak for the next half an hour or so.
Yeah, I think just because of my experience of working with people like that, I have a handful of them. And now that, the more and more I work with, the more it's, help what I've learned in one business and apply it to another, or have you tried this? Have you tried that? And, I am just a CPA. I'm not in real estate. But I've learned so much through working with those clients that I can speak the language and, know what type of KPIs we should be looking at, know a lot of the marketing channels and the way they, disposition properties. And it's really given me some pretty good insights into that industry.
I know you work with some of the biggest kind of real estate educators out there, and I know that's helped you to learn a lot. I've seen it with my own eyes, some of the work that you do, which is very good, by the way, hence the reason you're on here. So what is it exactly that you do? What would you say, what is it that you do, and who is your perfect avatar? And let's go down that road, how we can help those people.
Yeah, so we offer fractional CFO services. And the avatar is really anyone doing at least about 1 to 3 million in top line business per year. That's kind of
that means gross, I assume you mean, correct?
Yeah, so gross. So from a property standpoint, it would be how much you're selling less the cost of selling or flipping the property. So what you're making off of your deals. Once you're about at or approaching at least the 1 million a year mark, then that's when it makes sense to have kind of this higher level strategic partner is what we kind of call it, working with you and helping guiding you in those finances. So fractional CFO, we're really, we're your, like I said, financial partner, and we're looking at your numbers all the time, and we're helping develop a forecast. So not just telling you what already occurred. That is part of what we do is like, we do tell you what occurred because like I said, a lot of times people are kind of not in tune to it, or they think they know what they're spending, but they're never actually looking at the results in the end. So we are looking at that, but we are developing a forecast going forward so it can help you make better decisions. So, we want to bring on this next person. When should we do that? Well, let's build it in the forecast, make sure it makes sense. We want to turn on this marketing channel. Again, let's build it in the forecast. And we're going to talk about those. We meet twice a month, one time for a longer period where we review results, forecast, and any other kind of strategic things you have going on. And then we meet again towards the end of the month for a shorter period of time. And we just check in and we say, okay, either there's a project we've been working on with you, let's give an update, or maybe you have questions. And we always are looking at kind of where's the month going to land. Is there any, levers you need to pull, get a property closed before this time to, close out the month where you want to be. And we just go from there. And we work, in between those meetings, we're doing things in the background, running those models, working on anything. And then it all just comes together every month when we have our meetings together.
You mentioned KPIs, key performance indicators, I assume is what you meant. I think that's pretty important. A lot of people don't really know what in their industry would be a KPI, key performance indicator. Let's say I'm a real estate investor. I'm doing, I do some long-term, some fix and flips. What are some KPIs? This is a hard question, by the way. What are some KPIs you think I should look at as a business owner, as an entrepreneur in that world?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ones are really the marketing KPIs, to know where we're spending the money, how well is it performing for you, because that's usually one of their biggest expenses. So, how well is those marketing dollars performing to get the deals that you want, and then what's the ROI on it, and then where you can deploy, where you should deploy more money to back into the revenue goals you have. So we'll talk about reverse engineering some of those too. So what is, I want to have this much in profit from these type of deals. Well, let's reverse it all backwards and say, okay, well, if every deal takes this many, offers, how many leads do I have to get that many offers? How many, just keep going backwards to say how much money I need to spend to basically get that many leads that should turn into offers into closed deals. So I think that's one of the biggest ones, is marketing KPIs and metrics. And yeah, then we just kind of go from there. It all depends. Other things we'll look at is kind of some of your percent spend compared to your revenue. And then some could be, how long does it take to turn cash too? Like if you're going to spend, say, direct mail to longer lead time, someone might do that, but don't shut it off yet, because we know that it takes this many, months to start turning an ROI. So after you track that stuff, then you start to learn and can make decisions that way.
So you don't only get amongst you get even below the weeds. You get in the soil from the sounds of it. You're actively involved. And it sounds as though it's Brandy Best. It's not as though it's kind of some other consultant under you. It's actually Brandy Best, the CPA, the star of the world, who's getting in there and working with the client, correct?
Yeah. So I have a team, but it is me on the calls with the clients. And then I have some analysts that work with me to help do some of the kind of just month to month work or some other deep dive analysis, but I am on the call with the client to help walk through those and, kind of generate some of those ideas of things we should be looking at and tracking. And I think that's a big part of it, is just because I've talked with so many people and the big, long kind of corporate experience, that it's a lot of, like I said, generating ideas based on the conversation. We don't really know till we just start uncovering things and asking questions.
I like it. Okay. I dig it. I know you know what you're talking about, so I like it. So, all right, I'm going to, we have not prepared in any way. I like these to kind of be free flowing. So, and you mentioned marketing. I know you work with some of the biggest educators in the real estate space. So what percent, as a total guess, you don't have to, mention your client's name, by the way, but what percent would you think makes sense to spend on marketing, just because you mentioned ROI, return on investment? As far as marketing dollars, is the number 10% of gross per year, as an example? Is it 14? As a total guess, what number do you think makes sense as far as spending on marketing?
Yeah, I think a good target for this type of business is around 20%, because that's one of it's going to be like your biggest, between that and payroll, going to be your biggest expenses you have. And it's really what drives a lot of that revenue. You got to have the leads and they got to have a lot of leads to process what they need.
Got it. So the numbers kind of revolves, but it's around 20%. Somewhere.
Yeah. Whereas a different type of business model or all service, it might be lower, like you said, like 10 to 15%.
I know you don't do taxes, hence the reason I think we're partially working together, because we are the ones who are kind of potentially helping to lower your client's tax liability. But now I would ask, why wouldn't you do some taxes for a client? Because it sounds like you know what's going on. You're a big time CPA, but why is it that you kind of offshore that, if you will, not offshore in the traditional, but I call it offshore, meaning to another group?
Yeah. So I do have a very small contingent basis of taxes, but they are not as complex as what some of my CFO clients would be. And I don't want to be the expert in all the things. I want to be the expert in the thing that I enjoy most, which is I say, I want to help you make so much money, help you grow your margins that your taxes are a problem, that then we need to figure out tax planning too. But yeah, really just because I don't want to focus in too many areas. To do that, I would have to hire another just expert to focus on it, because I want to focus on this part, because it just gives me a lot more energy and enjoyment working with driving the numbers forward and helping grow the business.
Yeah, I totally got it. I appreciate that, by the way, but of course I do. All right, so let's get back to, sorry I'm asking all these nitty-gritty questions, but I think it adds value to the people who are watching and listening. So me as a business owner, let's just say I'm a real estate agent. What would you say is important what should be important to me as far as finances go? And why should I bring on a virtual CFO, a rent a CFO, or whatever the case is, when theoretically I can do my own finances, theoretically at least? Thoughts there?
I think because it's just not what you're an expert in. So it's going to take you a lot longer, and you don't know what you don't know. Because sure, you can look at the numbers and you can say, oh, this looks off or that looks off. You're not going to have all of the tools to build the forecast and the thought process into it, that you're going to spend too much time on it, for one, when you can be out making money and, a lot more than what you're going to spend on us. And then two, I think because it's not something you're an expert in, you're not going to want to maybe look at it. And so you're not going to do it as often as you should. So it's going to be every couple months, or you might be excited, you might build something and look at it for 2 months in a row, but then it's going to fall off. You're going to get busy and it's going to take too long to redo it. And you just don't have the right tools and skill set to do that. So I think it's those two things. Like, it's not your expertise, and you can be spending your time other areas. And I think a big part of our service too, is just the conversation that we have. It's hard to explain whenever I talk to anyone, what does that conversation look like? Because it's different for every client. But that brings out so many things. It's not just sure, there are parts of it where we're going through your results and we find things, but it's more just let's think through, what are some of the things, coming down the road in the next few months that we need to talk through, and maybe we generate some ideas with the business owner as well.
It's funny. I used to think that, everyone needs a good attorney to start a business or to run a business, and that's kind of it. That was so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think who should be in the car with the entrepreneur? That's the way I look at it. I think number one, there's got to be a tax advisor. Number two, there's got to be an attorney, general attorney, depending on the circumstances. And then, yes, a CFO or a chief financial officer, or whatever the case is, because those people are the ones who are vital to the success of a business. An attorney can keep the business owner out of hot water. The tax person can lower the biggest expenses, if tax are the biggest expenses, next to maybe even payroll or above payroll, depending on the circumstances. And then also the chief financial officer, or what have you, a virtual CFO, because they're the ones who can help you go down the right path of making money and or of saving money. And people don't realize that to have a successful, if you will, trip, et cetera, you need those people. And it took me a while as an entrepreneur. I've been entrepreneur since 92, or really 92, 94. And it took me a while to figure that out, but it's vital. It really is vital, because if you look at all successful business people, they usually have those people in their car with them. That's why I look at it, at least.
Yeah. And we love when someone comes to us that already has, the tax expert and the bookkeeper, because then we know we can just hit the ground running because they've got good stuff in order. And so we always want those. And that's why I like talking with you, because sometimes I'll run across people that I look at and I'm like, yeah, they're just not ready and they need cleanup, or they need this or that. And I've struggled to, a couple times I've tried taking it on ourselves. And again, I just don't like working on that. So it takes longer than it should. And that's why we're looking to have people to, partner with, to be able to have, those books in order right away from day one, that we can just do our job and add value right away.
Right. And when you mentioned books in order, I think a lot of people are thinking about, some of our clients are getting a little bit older. Some people want to sell their business. I think if they have a virtual CFO on staff or quote on staff or retainer, or whatever the case is, that they, instead of selling their business for, making this up, 10 million bucks, they might be able to sell it for, I don't know, 11 or 12 million bucks. So it makes sense to have that CFO, virtual CFO in their car with them, because who knows, sure, let's just say someone's spending whatever, $2,000, $5,000 a month, whatever the number is. But if they can end up selling their business for more than what the cost has been, more on it, more on you,
Absolutely. Like the books can already be in order too, and then we can still help optimize that. And I think because we're always making it management reporting, that's what we're very focused on. And with the, I do have the tax knowledge and background to know, like, well, we should, if we're going to call it here, let's maybe call it this, so that your tax accountant knows really what's going on, because I know that needs tracked differently for taxes, but we're going to put it here so that it makes sense for reporting as we're managing the business on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. Before I forget, how do people get a hold of you? I always forget that, and people are like, oh, hey, how do I get a hold of this person? How do people get a hold of young Brandy Best?
Yeah, you can reach out on my website. So that is bestfitcfo.com, or connect through Kenner or anyone there. Warm leads, we always can take a 3-way text as well.
A 3-way text. You're not suggesting us to text you, are you? Or what's another?
With you, but I'm not going to give my phone number out here.
Got it. That's I wasn't sure where you're going with that. So wait a minute. So I've known Brandy for a while. So why don't you give a little bit about who you are, so people understand who Brandy Best is?
Yeah. So my background, I have a big corporate background before I started my business. And I think that's really what drove me into the CFO side versus focusing on the CPA work. So I spent 15 years at 2 different Fortune 500 companies in both accounting and business finance. So through that realm, really grew a lot of experience as well as leadership. And, my last few years in my last role was a global company, the financial planning and analysis leader for a global portion of the business. Gave me a lot of experience in just kind of what the really big companies are talking about, what they're watching, how are they forecasting on a regular basis, and what are the key components, and just even deeper, a lot of executive presence and preparing those types of conversations. And, it brought me a lot of experience in helping people develop, how do you want to create someone's compensation plan? Bonuses, how might we structure something like that? Taking a lot of that from my corporate experience. And even as deep as, things I participated in before were risk analysis type things that we should be looking at for the whole company. So, for example, is all of your revenue come from one source, or 90% of your revenue come from one customer, or, or if you're a real estate, are you dependent on that one contractor doing all of your flips for you? And if something happens with them or that relationship goes south, what's going to happen? Just looking at things from that perspective, I think I gained all of that experience that I can now apply into the entrepreneurial world. And I left the corporate world in 2021, kind of through COVID, by my choice. I wanted to kind of change and myself dictate my time a little bit better. And I think that's what, I decided to do. Started with taxes and bookkeeping and quickly learned, like, this isn't what I really want to do. I want to be helping grow the money. And that is, I'm really good at that. So shifted there and have just been focusing on the CFO side of the business since then.
Got it. And if I remember correctly, you've been married to you've been with your now husband since like middle school, or at least high school.
High school. Yep.
You live in Ohio. You have if I remember correctly, 2 boys, and both are in sports, if I remember correctly. And you're a sporty lady. I think you're in a little hockey, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So my boys play hockey. I have boys that are, young teenagers. So that's fun. Been with my husband since I was 15. And yeah, I'm into, like, I was an athlete when I was growing up, and now I just really enjoy the general working out, and functional fitness type workouts. So that's what
wait a minute, backing up. What kind of athlete were you? What sports do you play?
I played volleyball in high school, and I coached for a couple years after that, and then just started having kids and working really hard.
I
stuff.
understand. Functional, wait a minute, functional fitness. You do CrossFit?
Yeah, I just don't like to say CrossFit, so I said functional fitness.
I got it. I've competed for years until I just hurt my back too recently. But anyway, all right, very cool. So you're a well-rounded person. Obviously, you're doing well in business. You also like tight family, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I believe you do business all over the country, correct?
Yep, I have clients from a couple in California, Texas, Florida, Ohio, so kind of all over.
And just to double check, so let's just say as an example, I'm a client, potential client, and I have let's say a tax provider, and maybe even a bookkeeper. You could still come in. You don't supplant those professionals.
Right.
You could still come in and work with existing professionals, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly prefer that because then I don't have to go find them as long as they're good. Now, I've run across some that maybe aren't as good, or sometimes they're doing it in-house and they might need a little more hand-holding, but usually once we kind of get on board, there's just little tweaks here that we can help them out with that, then they've got it.
Well, so what are some other things that you see that a business owner, an entrepreneur, a real estate investor, or whatever the case is, an entrepreneur making $3 million, what are some other key suggestions or things that you normally see that they're doing wrong that you can add value in, or someone like you can add value to someone in that of that nature?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing, and we just kind of had a recent example, but they are just running their business. Like I said, they're kind of disconnected from the actual numbers. So they're running with what they know, what they're tracking on a weekly basis. They think they've seen sales come through the merchant processor. They think they know what they're spending, but they're never then looking. They may have a bookkeeper doing books, and that bookkeeper may send them reports, but they never look at them. Or if they do, it's like here or there, there's still money in the bank account. So it's really just tying all of that together because, for one example before with the merchant processor, they were never tying things from what was going on and what they were seeing in their weekly reports to what really was happening in the end and being tied out. And we discovered a very, very large, like multiple six figures amount of money that was sitting in a reserve with the merchant processor that the client had no idea was even occurring. They did not know that a reserve was being held on every item, and they had no idea that had built up. So as we tried to reconcile and bring everything together, we found this, and they were like, holy crap. And they got several $100,000 released back to them that they didn't even know was there, and got the agreement adjusted. So
Yeah,
that was a real quick win.
Excuse me. You're kind of an interpreter, financial interpreter. That's why I look at it. And also a sleuth. You could sometimes find find finances where a client wouldn't otherwise find it because you know what's going on because you've been doing finance for at least pretty good.
And it was like, I will not accept that, like, this, what you're telling me here equals this. They're nowhere in line. So we are doing the dissecting to kind of figure out the bridge between. We want to reconcile it. So once we finally do, well, then we uncover this massive thing that nobody knew about.
Yeah, that I would think that's key. If you could find whatever $200,000, whatever the number is, and they're spending whatever $5,000 a month for your services or whatever the number is, it totally makes sense.
For ourselves for years.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so then let's say I'm a successful business owner. I've been in business for, I'm trying to think of our avatar, 15 years, and I think, dude, I know what's going on. I do my own finances. I do top-end finances. I get Quicken or QuickBooks, and I understand it. Maybe my spouse does a little bit of help on the finances. What do you say to those people when you can add some value as an example?
I think really it's just optimizing. They might kind of know what's going on, but we can just bring more to it. So another one was just merchant fees. For example, they were going through something else that was whatever it is. And I'm like, man, that looks really high. Like, so you might be doing things you just don't know because you haven't seen the wide array of like options that are out there.
Yep.
That you could lower it. So for that client, we made a suggestion, they changed, and it dropped, that was probably $60,000 to $90,000 a year savings on like $1 million some a year client. So that's huge for them. And it's just, that's optimization that they just don't know about. I think one of the, someone may think they know what's going on, but in some of these real estate businesses, they have so many subscriptions and stuff. And that's one of the things we do for all of our clients is a report, and it seems so simple. It is a simple report, but no one looks at it, where we just trend out by vendor all of the subscriptions you're paying for by month. And it's very easy to see then, like, oh, we need to cancel this one, we need to cancel that one. Like, they're like, who's using that? No one's using that. That's always something like that we do with our clients. And in the first few months, they're constantly canceling things and finding stuff.
Yeah, I'll give you a funny little story there. So we changed offices not too long ago. I'm embarrassed to say this, but the cobbler always has the worst shoes, right? So as an example, I'm doing someone's shoes all the time. I'm just going to make sure that I have bad shoes because that's just the way we roll, right? Same thing with the finances. So we didn't even realize that our local TV provider called Comcast was charging us I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'll tell you anyway, $700 a month for years. We had no clue. We thought they were throwing all the stuff in there. When we unwrapped the ongoing charge, we found out that was something they gave us for free for 3 months, and then they've been getting us for hundreds of dollars.
Oh,
yeah. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to make sure that there's someone in place to help review that ever so often.
Mhm.
I don't care if it's every year or whatever the case is, because you can save a lot of money. I mean, that's an example, $700. That's a lot of dough,
Right, exactly. And those are things that always pop up too. And we just had a meeting today, and then you say like, hey, look, you got a new one. Is this a new thing? It was actually like, no, our card was fraudulently used. And so they find that, and they go and then fix those things.
That's another example, fraudulent. I mean, we always seem to get, and we're really careful about that stuff, safety. We are always getting people who are trying to, hack into our accounts, and you got to make sure that, well, if someone does hack into your account, you could turn it off very quickly,
Right.
and save the pain down the road.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you have an external bookkeeper, and they're like, well, okay, it's a subscription, so they just book it. And if you as the business owner are never looking that closely, you're just looking at your total line. Yeah, it goes up and down a little bit, but once we bring that kind of next layer of reporting there, then you can see those things.
All right, let's talk. What about bookkeeping? Let's talk about bookkeeping. I know you don't really do bookkeeping, but tell the audience about the importance of bookkeeping itself, on let's say a monthly basis. Do you find that important?
Yeah, it's the foundation of everything. So I always say, garbage in, garbage out. So if the bookkeeping's not good, our reporting makes no sense. And then we're going to just get stuck talking about non-valuable things like this should be here versus there, or this doesn't tie out, this doesn't make any sense, versus talking about strategy and the real things that matter. So yeah, super important to be, have your bookkeeping done and have it done regularly, so that it's not, months behind, or even, nothing done until weeks after the month's close, because then it's just, it's too slow. It's, you need a little bit more real-time data there.
Do your clients mainly, do you shoot for once a month?
For updates, ideally, we like it, once a week would be best, but at least twice a month, because we do meet with them kind of right before the month closes. So we want to have a good idea of what's happening at that point, and we can project a little bit on what's still to occur. And then definitely for our CFO meetings, we do like them to be done a few days in advance of the meeting so that we can prepare. Ideally, we say by our preference is by workday 5, maybe 7, but it really just depends what the bookkeeper can do, and that will dictate how, quickly we can have our meetings and talk about relevant data.
Yep. I like that. Nice work. All right. So we've been talking for, roughly a half an hour. What's something that we have not talked about that you think that we should have talked about that can add value to a business owner and hopefully make them rich or save them money? One of the two.
Add value. Gosh, I don't know. We've covered a lot here.
I like that. That's the goal, is to cover as much as possible in a short amount of time. Our business owners are busy. They like getting right to it.
Yeah, I think it's really I've said it several times, but there's just so much you don't know what you don't know. And until you have another set of eyes and strategic thought process helping you out and looking at those things, I think that's really just one of the biggest things in the value we provide to people too, is just that second layer of thinking and provoking. I'll say I'm not a marketing expert, but I've seen enough things that I can bring thought-provoking conversation to have ideas that move forward. So I think we don't know what we don't know is the biggest thing.
The way I look at it, and this is something we haven't talked about, I look at a virtual CFO as almost, this is going to sound weird, almost as an investor. Now, why is that? Meaning, because they're looking at it from an investor's viewpoint and not in the weeds. I think business owners sometimes look in the weeds. They don't think of themselves as business owners per se, or as investors. And I think a CFO, virtual CFO, brings a totally different spin on it. They look at it as, what's my ROI as an example? What's my rate of return looking at cash that's been dispensed or invested? And I think that's pretty important because it makes a distinction for the business owner who, again, has their head in the weeds. They're not even thinking about it from an investor standpoint. And I think that's the real vital element to a virtual CFO, because they're looking at it from a numbers perspective versus, going out and marketing, as an example, as a business owner would do. And I think that's where the value is. So if the business owner said, if the virtual CFO says, your rate of return, I'm making this up, is 12%, and otherwise your money could have been making whatever 3% in a bank, well, you know that this is probably a pretty darn good investment because this person's representing the investor. That's the way I look at it. I know that's a kind of conceptual way of looking at it, but I'll go with that.
Yeah. And we look a lot at people's profit margin percent too, and always, wanting to maximize that and seeing, too, as you tick up your revenue, how much of that is, does it increase your profit margin, or do your expenses kind of stay flat on a consistent basis? Those are a lot of things we look at. And I like how you mentioned too, kind of in the weeds or not, and in a different perspective. But one thing that's, helped with us is I do have that finance analyst who is preparing some of the reports and in the weeds a little bit more. And so then when it comes to me to prepare for our meeting and have the conversations, I'm already kind of stepped up another level from those weeds that they can point me to. But at the same time, I look at a bigger picture already before meeting with the business owner and trying to keep them at the high level conversation.
Yeah. Brandy Best. I like it. You're the best, Brandy Best. All right. One last time. How does someone get a hold of you if they're interested in virtual CFO services?
Yep. They can reach out to me on our website, and that's bestfitcfo.com.
Thank you very much. I mean, Brandy's one of the best. I mean, I've known her for a while. I know people who've worked with her who speak very highly of her. So truly, if you're looking for virtual CFO, she is a candidate. She's someone you should talk to. By the way, who am I? Kenneth French, vastsolutionsgroup.com. You're watching and listening to The Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.